Welcome to the Eater gameplay guide from BT22, which is also a Cyber Sleuth trait deck, which is pure white. And today we're facing off against another Cyber Sleuth deck, which is going to be ALPHAMON right off the bat. We are going first, and generally with Mother Eater, we want to be able to hatch and go start our breeding area as much as we can to rack up sources underneath. The whole idea of this deck is to try to put down your Eater species form and have them draw you cards. And that's how you cycle through an entire deck. And as you play them out, have them get deleted and tucked under your Mother Eater, you can start reducing your play cost of everything else, which is fairly familiar. As many of you guys may know, it's very similar to Mother D Reaper and all those other decks that can play cards with multiple up to 50 copies, which is Eater species. Now, one of the early important stages of the game when it comes to the matchup knowledge is you want to know if your opponent is playing aggressive type deck or not. So that is the reason, because you want to decide if you want to use your Eaters to chip at their security and have them deleted. And if they are deleted, you can tuck under and you gain value by reducing your play cost. But if you know your opponent has aggression early and they want to try to attack you as quickly as possible, at the same time they don't have low end removal, you want to keep your Eaters up in the board and try to block their attacks so that it can slow it down, because eventually you want to get into 10 sources underneath Mother Eater. And that is a very difficult task to achieve in this day and age of Digimon because of how fast games go. But Mother Eater and the Eater archetype itself has tools to control and try to slow down the game pace eventually when you can get there. The thing is, you don't necessarily always need to achieve your Mother Eater 10 Digivolution requirement condition in order to win the game, because there is quite a lot of setup. You need your Achemies, which is your main tamer of the deck, which we're not finding at the moment just yet, but I'm trying to cycle as much as I can with Mirai. But you still want to establish your multiple different CS trait tamers on the board to help you gain value advantages, such as this Errata right here, because it's going to give me a memory setter at the start of my turn every single time. The nice thing about playing against the CS trait ALPHAMON deck is that they generally don't have a lot of protection, so when we have removal, we want to take advantage of it as much as possible to get rid of their Digimon off the board and slow them down. I noticed the opponent was kind of hiccuping in the early stage of the game a little bit, so we want to try to control it as much as we can. Part of the game plan is to try to find ways to add as many sources and as quickly as possible underneath Mother Eater, utilizing the breeding inherit effect all turns once per turn. Whenever a Eater trait Digimon will leave the battle area except by your own effects, you get to tuck it underneath, which is really good, and you can play around a lot of unique applications and interactions at the same time. Right here, I realized I made a suboptimal play, because aside from just playing the Errata back out from my Eater Atom, I could have actually tucked the Eater Atom itself underneath my Mother Eater as well. And I mentioned earlier how hard it is to actually rack up 10 sources, and you want to take every opportunity possible. So that was definitely suboptimal for me on my end right there, because I would have one more additional source to help me achieve that big boss summoning win condition potentially right there. But in this whole situation, it's still okay. We're stabilizing. We're actually taking a bit of the lead when it comes to security, chipping our opponents down, dealing enough damage, putting them down to 1 or fewer. But this is kind of scary because they have a kill code established, and with that they have the ability to try and warp into ALPHAMON, whether with its reduced cost when it unsuspends, or they can simply just warp on top of it straight off for the full 5 cost. And with 2 Ami Aibas on the board, they're going to be constantly starting their whole turn with 5 memory, and it's very easy for them to do so. So this is exactly what they do right here. We're going to try to use the Eater Eve to stun down the ALPHAMON, but unfortunately we don't have a Yuko to tuck underneath under and utilize it. But things are going good, because with ALPHAMON's DP reduction, it does get rid of our bodies, but this helps us rack up more and more sources underneath. And as you guys can see, we pretty much have enough sources and we're ready to go in the following turn. You guys may have noticed why I haven't flipped my last Mother Eater Egg, because its effect is at the start of breeding. We get to look at the top card of our Digi Egg deck, and then we get to choose to actually place the mother at the very top sources or not. Now, the reason why we're not doing that in the early stages is because there is a combo that you can potentially play out only 2 mothers instead, and then have a chance and opportunity to reloop your mothers, and you can recycle them back into your sources as long as you have constantly another mother inherit effect to utilize. You guys can see I play out the 3 mothers here. What I'm going to do is going to delete both the ALPHAMONs, noticing that they don't have the protection, so that's the advantage that we can get, and now we can actually secure a win con right there. The other thing is that if we had an additional mother, we would have hatched it in the next following turn, and then we would have a inherit effect of mother, so then we can actually slide the mother Digi Eggs in our battle area back underneath it if it would ever leave the battle area except by our own effects, and that will allow us to kind of like repeat this ongoing again and again. But I will admit it almost never happens because games don't tend to go as long, which is absolutely crazy. But either way, we're setting up our win condition here already. They have no choice but to drop a Oreo Ace, but thanks to Cyberspace Eden, all of our mothers are at least 16k by the mother effects, and plus a 2k, it's 18k is not going to be enough to remove them at all at the same time. And once it's out, so for the safer play, we're just going to remove their board, getting rid of that Oreo Ace, gain Ace Overflow, and clearing off the Haguru at the same time. And now the only thing left to do is to run over their final securities to swing for game with our mother Stampede. Next game, we're facing off against ALLFORCE, which also got a bunch of new support in BT22. Really strong stack-based deck that can climb up very, very quickly. I looked at my mulligan hand. I saw 2 Eater Atoms, and I feel like they're not going to be super helpful in the early stages of the game. I want to see more regular Eater species form along with some Tamers or other option cards I can utilize a little bit early on and then ramp up, because just with the Eater Atom, like I don't even have a Narada alongside together with it, which is why I decided to go for the mulligan right here. And we are going second, but the mulligan hand was really, unfortunately, I'd say arguably worse than our first initial hand, which now thinking back, I would have rather kept my first hand, just because having like triple Yuko and like double Akemi and only 1 Eater species, this is going to be a rough ride. This is going to be a rough one for sure, but we're still going to try our best. And now we also find an Eater Atom, which is not going to be super helpful. So the reason why I put down the Akemi instead of just dropping down the Eater species form right away is because I felt like I need to really draw those cards, as well as gain memory every single turn to maintain as much advantage as I can, but also potentially setting up for our Mother Eater play whenever we play them out, so that we can tuck it underneath to give it Rush, Alliance, and Scapegoat, mainly to go for the Rush attack. So here the opponent is really a matter of like if they're able to find their ALLFORCE stack fast enough, and if they're able to gather all their Tamers, because once they do, they can pop off with like almost infinite amount of attacks. The ALLFORCE Digimon is the fastest Roar Knight at the end of the day, so you know the amount of speed and unsuspending that I can do is crazy insane. Right now, it looks like they're not gathering everything they need just yet, so I feel like there's an opportunity for us to actually try and stabilize in the game. We're chipping down their security bit by bit. We're utilizing the Eater species forms attack so that we can tuck into the source, having it deleted, and that is my main goal. Of course, we want to be mindful and keep some on the board in case we need to go for like blocks to redirect their attacks, but I feel like once they go for it, the sheer amount of attacks can really overcome the amount of blockers and redirects that we may have as well. So we're going to constantly keep putting it underneath here and go, and then by blocking their attacks, we can continue to rack up more sources underneath. Just like before, noticing how I'm not exactly just putting my last Mother Eater to the top sources just quite yet, because just in case if the game goes far enough, I'm able to actually play 2 out, and then I can have another one to be hatched afterwards and kind of like cycle in that way. But honestly, again, like I mentioned in the previous game, it will never happen. It rarely ever happens until we get some kind of like really strong control board removal type of like support and cards and that sort of ways to build this deck. I don't really see it happening at the moment. The opponent's already into their ALLFORCE. Not only just into ALLFORCE, they have an Arrow Digimon stack to work with them. In addition to that, they're already going to start dishing out their multiple arenas and start attacking us back to back to back. They're going to have a lot of DP. They can unsuspend, they have evade, blocker, all that, and gain a ton of memory while they're doing so. And we got to make those choices. Do we want to go for the block? But here we got really lucky because I think they're about to OTK us right here with the Queen device. Actually giving 2 of their Digimon security -2 for that particular turn stops them from going for lethal attacks right here. And because of that, they pretty much have to awkwardly find a way to like pass their turn and not really like continue attacking anymore. As a matter of fact, the Queen device adds to our hand, and this really gives us a chance. At this moment, I decided to hatch the last one. I did mention you trying to want to, you know, think about like hatching your last mother or putting the top source underneath. But I feel like at this point, like the game is not going to last that long anymore. So having that additional source right away, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And then I'm going to try that chip right here and see if they would respond by blocking, which they do, which only makes sense because they have double blocker. And with that, I might be able to remove some of their bodies and try to actually get rid of certain things. I'm actually going to hard drop the Eater Atom, reducing the play cost by 4, and then by suspending the 2 Akemis, I can gain 2 memory back. I don't get to draw. Unfortunately, I don't have errata to tuck underneath it, otherwise it would be much greater value, but at least I digivolve either Eve on top of the Yuko, passing them to 3 since they have a memory set anyways. I can stun down that All Force. Either Eve is a very clutch card and really key card in this matchup because it prevents them from suspending, and if they can't suspend, they can't unsuspend. If they can't suspend, they can't neither attack. So we can use that to our advantage and see how we go. Now, we bought ourselves another turn, and the thing is, like, how are we going to deal with this All Force again? You know, we only kind of like freeze them for that one little bit, and where do we go? Like, can we actually get rid of that All Force? Now, there is a line of play where I can go for Queen's Device, DP reduce it, and then use either Eve to try to swing over it with Raid to get rid of it. But I'm going to go ahead and chip away security because I have another plan, because I don't want to get rid of that All Force in the trash, because I know they have Scramble that they can potentially like stack it back to the top or grab it. I'm not sure if they have one in the trash currently at the moment exactly, but that's was my whole thinking process during there. I felt like I have a chance to pressure for lethal, so I'm going to go for the 2 checks of either Adam, which does go through, but I end up giving them a memory boost, which wouldn't be ideal. So I'm going to end the turn by playing Cyberspace Eden just to have DP buff, but also having a contingency plan as my last final security. And then now I can hard drop the Eater Eve using the last Eater species reduction to play for 5, passing them back to 3 once again, tuck the Yuko underneath and re-stun that All Force, so that, you know, that way the All Force is not be able to attack, then it's not, you know, more than just a useless body on the board on their side, because they don't really gain security attack +1 unless they're playing the older ROV. But here, either way, they climb into a secondary All Force, they get to go into the ROV to search for some tamers, which they don't get, but now they get to continue their barrage of attacks, and let's see, hopefully, do we have enough or what it takes to actually defend ourselves. We could get lucky on security where there are some certain cards that can help us maybe potentially slow them down. If we run into another Cyberspace Eden, we can set up another blocker, and that's another way, but we only have 1 Eater species form to block 1 single attack, which is again why I really wish I had the errata underneath Eater Adam, because then I would at least be able to redirect 1 more attack and force them to see if they have any more resources to go through. By that point, my final second security, I decided, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna block. I'm also trying to bank in our security, hoping that they might check into a errata, which then would give us another redirect, which we can utilize immediately as soon as played out off the security effect. At this point, I'm just really hoping they don't have enough attacks, since we can block 1 more hit with the species form, but unfortunately it looks like they got an additional tamer and they're just too fast for us. This game, we're facing off against a new Atmon deck, which is Uranusmon with the yellow Atmon with Musimon as well. And we are going second, which is not too bad, because I want to show you guys, aside from trying to utilize the mother and try to play out the mothers to use them to try to finish the game off with big bodies like that, there are opportunities that this deck can finish the games off and close games off quick enough before that even happens. Like we mentioned before, like having 10 sources underneath mother is very, very difficult, and you know, it's a very late game heavy requirement that we don't always get to get there, and games don't last that long. So we're gonna go ahead and switch gears a little bit. I decided to put down the Yuko early just so I can gain advantage in memory, and because I have Eve to work with in my hand, I decided to go for some board control and attack into them, and then set up my species form on the board and see how it goes from there, so that we're taking down their bodies. We're not really letting them gain as much value and advantage, but they are being able to search through and find all their stuff and have something ready to go in the following turn. For our next turn, all I want to do is just start chipping at their security and attack them as much as we can in order to progress our win condition here, aside from only just using mother, because like I mentioned, we have to attack. We want to attack with the human form, which we did check into Effectmon, which is great in a way where we get to play out the Errata Sonata off human form. Now we have a memory setter for free, and then we can easily use Eve to clear up the rest of that Effectmon by using Raid and getting rid of their bodies to control the board momentum all over again. And then to pass the turn, since they have a memory setter, we're just going to drop like 2 species form, and it's pretty crazy because they have DP reduction effects as they sort of climb up into their stack and do all that. And here the opponent forgot to gain additional memory with Tojishiro, but that's okay because their play doesn't change at the end of the day because we have a memory setter anyways. They would be at like passing us to 1 memory, but we'll start at 3 of Errata. They're going to go through this entire app fuse combo and all of that. End of turn, being able to link something from hand as well for free, and then they get to play out a body with Entermon, and as well now climb into Uranusmon, pretty much deleting everything that we have on our side of the board, which is pretty good value for them. Now the thing is, we already kind of exhausted like 2 of the inherent effects of Mother Eater, and the unfortunate thing is that once they get rid of this human form, we're not able to tuck it underneath because they only have 2 inheritables. That's when I wish I have my like last hatch right there with the last source, but yeah, you know, I felt like this game, again, there's no point to prolong it to go for that late game combo of having like fanciness of, you know, trying to play out 2 mothers and then try to retuck all of that. So I just decided, you know what, I want to utilize as much abilities and effects to add them underneath the source big stack as much as I can anyway. Since I do plan to go a little bit wide in this matchup, I'm just gonna hatch my last egg right there and try to clear their board. I'm gonna be able to go into either Adam, I can get rid of their stuff, their bodies, and then try to use a medieval here for a big power play. Even though I'm giving them 7 memory, I'm not afraid because now they have to re-establish their entire board. They have to find something to actually defend themselves. I know they don't have a whole lot of resources in their hand just because they went through a whole cycle of cards in the first stack already, so they might be fairly limited on what they can do. And what I'm pressuring here is Lethal for turn in the next following to swing for another 2 checks with Adam, and then I have either the species or medieval to finish it off the game, and they have to find a way to stop us from attacking them either with a blocker or try to remove the board. Now I made a fatal mistake right here. I thought the opponent was well aware of, like, you know, them playing out a Digimon such as Gossipmon. They do take their on plays effect first, but I felt like, oh, maybe they were baiting us to pop that Gossipmon so that they would play out like a level 3, and then they're going to try to link and re-app fuse all the way from the top over there, which is why I actually forgo the effect of Medieval to pop that Gossipmon, which I definitely should have, because now I'm getting punished for it, and you guys can see they're clearing our boards once again, DP reducing, getting rid of everything. As a matter of fact, they get all their effects now first before my medieval can even re-trigger off of like Oranismon's effect of playing something out. And we're gonna lose a medieval basically. And wow, big mistake on my end. Very, very unfortunate. But hey, we're learning, we're understanding. Don't worry guys, we're still gonna be able to show you guys that we can still try to secure and get this in the bag no matter what. We're gonna start our turn at 3 memory with Arata. We're gonna go and gain additional with Yuko. So I only have to deal with these 2 bodies. Oranismon doesn't have a lot of inherited effects, not inherited effects, but like link sources for them to relink over and over. So again, I could either choose to get rid of it or deal with it. I don't really have anything I can get rid of it instantly because I already exhausted my medieval there. I don't have another one here just quite. But here I can go into either Adam, take out that Recomon first, swing for 2 checks, pressure for lethal either way. And you know what, I felt like since they start at 3 memory, this is perfect for us to Digivolve into either Eve and stun down the Oranismon. If Oranismon can't attack, then they can't play bodies. If they can't play bodies, they can't gain value off of it. So all they have is an Mshimon to work with, and they're going to gain 2 memory with Tojishiro right there to start their turn at 5, which is still pretty scary because if they have all their combo line pieces, they also have the delay option. They can easily climb all the way up back to another Oranismon and stabilize the board and get rid of us. Here is where they decided to go ahead and try to play out the Musimon, and then now they can use the Oranismon to actually link something away. They're going to link Gossipmon under Mcmon right there to grab a source back from their trash. But I realized they actually may have made a little bit of a mistake here on their end in terms of like a slightly suboptimal play, because I feel like they should have tried to link with the Mcmon that came out from Raising, and by going into Mediamon, that Mediamon stack would have been able to attack. But they went on to the Musimon that was just hard play that turn, so if it can't attack, even if they go into a Oranismon or anything big stack, or even like an Entermon, which is their level 5, they could have at least like cleared our either Adam right there off the board, and maybe also have a blocker set up to stop them from attacking. You guys can see our win condition right there. No matter what they kind of do here at this point already, all we have to do is actually just Evo into our, on top of our Yuko, into another either Eve. We'll just stun the blocker down. Is there a way for them to set up 2 blockers? If they're able to set up 2 blockers, then they might be able to survive, but they're just hard dropping the Recomons, which are just trying to draw cards. Maybe still trying to find certain pieces. They might want to link with the Recomon underneath Entermon, but they're gonna have to pay 1 memory, and that's gonna pass the turn, which may not be ideal because they want to get rid of the Eater Adam as well at the same time. But I felt like they could have just actually linked into the Recomon, and then they would have been able to block the attack with Eater Adam, and we only have like fewer memory so that Yuko wouldn't be able to Digivolve into Eater Eve to finish the game off, since it does cost 3. But either way, we're going to take advantage of that, because now we're going to be really good position, because they really tunneled in and trying to get rid of this Eater Adam because they don't have blockers. So they're at this point, they're just asking and seeing if we have the answer to it, which we actually do. And here, which is still unfortunate, even till this point, we only have 9 sources under Mother Eater. And this is exactly how I mentioned in the earlier stages of the game, that you need to find opportunities to attack as much as possible, especially alongside with Eater Adam, to do 2 checks at a time to push for lethal in game. But like we mentioned, we got Eater Eve to finish it off. Draconic Blade is now live on the AVAULT Store, which is one of the most epic drops I ever released, and the first 50 people to order the full collection will get an exclusive memory marker during this time only. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video, and this is AVAULT signing